Okay, it's too hot to do any more of these today. So this is where my woodshed's going. And great spot. I don't want to move it. I really don't want to dig 4 more holes, but I ran into a bit of a glitch over here. And my 4th post hole, because I squared it all up using my tumpline, and my 4th post has to go there. So I tried whittling at these yesterday for about an hour, and this guy, he's a foot deep, and I'm not to the bottom of him. And I swear to God, they're welded at the hip somewhere in here, these two. So ain't happening, and I'm not moving it. So I started to dig another hole here. We'll put flat rock on that. So this post just gonna sit on that flat rock. I'm gonna put my post in there, and I'll lash that into that upright. It should be strong enough. It's a fairly small woodshed. Anyway, enough for today. It's too bloody hot out here. So I've got all my material peeled for the frame, and initially I was just going to do my uprights. So I've got my my 2 front ones, my 2 back ones, my 2 beams for the front and the back, all peeled. And at first I was going to not peel the rest because I thought, okay, they're up above ground, they're under a roof, I'm not going to do that. And then I hear this voice in my ear, and it's my father, and he's going, Peter, job worth doing is worth doing right. So yeah, I peeled all of them as well. Yeah, anyway, it's funny, you know, when you think about it, when your parents use your first name at the start of a sentence and they put a little tone to it, you know it's awful important to them. Whether it's important to you or not, you pay attention. Anyway, so probably good idea. No sense skimping now. Anyway, it's one hot day, and I've had just about enough. What I want to do before I quit for the day, I'm going to finish my holes back here, and then tomorrow I'll be able to get a start at the frame. Oh, just an afterthought. Yeah, I'm not one to give advice, but if you're going to build a log cabin and you have to peel logs, or you have to peel a log for any reason, do it like the old timers said. So the theory was you'd peel a log in any month that doesn't have an R in it. So that leaves May, June, July, and August, because the bark will come off sort of like that. Full length of the thing, versus winter time, that would be a big piece. So I started this cabin in late fall, late September, which has an R in it, obviously, and so do the next 5 or 6 months that I built this darn thing. So literally, it took me probably 100 hours longer to peel the logs than it would have had I started the cabin, say, in May or June. But anyway, I got the cabin up in the winter, and now I'm working on this, and pretty soon I'm going to start having a little leisure time back here. I'm going to get these holes dug, and then I'm calling it quits. So I particularly like tools that have more than one purpose. So my little copper bucket here, it's serving as a post hole cleaner device right now. And tonight it's going to have some new potatoes from the garden bubbling in it. So yeah, pretty cool tool. But the one that most fascinates me, and most people just call it a piece of rope, is the tumpline. So this is my brow band. I like to keep them small. I've stitched some brain tan deer hide on that, and I got a little bit of wool behind it for padding. It's 12 strands that I weave in the center, and then I braid them into 3s, and it's 20 feet long. But this tool, probably the most underappreciated tool of the pioneers, and they almost all had them. So many functions, so many purposes. So you have to square a building, and to get square you got to go corner to corner so you get all your posts right. So it works for that. It works as a measuring tape because they didn't have them. So I'll find out the distance I want, and I'll put a little thong of leather through those two spots, and that's how I measure the logs that I'm cutting. But the tumpline was used for, and I use it for so many things. It can be used to haul big game out of the animal, or big game out of the forest in a hunt, a successful hunt. It can be used to suspend that game when you're cleaning and butchering it. You can use it as a strong back to put up a shelter in inclement weather. It can be used for tied to a canoe as a painter to line a canoe down through rapids. It just goes on and on. When I'm trekking, when I do my solo treks, historic treks, I use it to bring in bundles of firewood. So I got a little technique I use where I lay it out and I bring in big bundles of wood and I get all that dead wood on it because I don't want to have to chop it into little bits of firewood. Tie that all up, put it on my forehead, and walk it back to my camp. So probably the most useful tool in this build, and yeah. Anyway, I do like useful tools. I've got my four holes, well, 3 holes dug that I can, and as I mentioned earlier, I've got to put a post on that other one, and yeah, hopefully tomorrow the frame goes up. Gotta go clean my pot for supper. In this entire cabin build and now outbuildings, we have tried to demonstrate as best as we can how things were done in the 1700s. So our persona is mid 1700s. Yeah, and obviously I'm not using a 1700s shovel here. I've yet to find a 300-year-old shovel that isn't broken. They look quite a bit different. They would have had a D handle instead of a straight shaft. Different shapes of blades, grain shovels, etc. For digging, it would have looked more like the spade on a deck of cards, for example. And so it's my hope at some point I'm going to build a small blacksmith shop back here, bring some of my tools from my main blacksmith shop back and set it up, and probably build an actual stone hearth with a set of bellows that pull with the rope and all that stuff, and it'll be authentic. And then I can start to actually recreate some of the tools that I haven't been able to find in antique shops and things. So, yeah, bit off, but I got one building at a time in the woodsheds now. I got an outhouse to build. someone commented on the YouTube that they grew up with a spring house, and I'm thinking that's planted a seed with me, and that's probably on my list now too. Anyway, and I'm sure somebody's going to say, those posts you're sticking in the ground, well, they're going to rot. Well, they're cedar to start with. They're peeled. And I grew up in a small dairy farm, and about the time I was born, very early 50s, they put in new fences on our farm, and they were cedar posts. And as far as I know, those fence posts are still in the ground, so they've lasted 70 years. And if I look at my birth date, I'm not going to have to worry about these things rotting. No, they'll be fine. Anyway, a few more poles to go, and yeah, got most of the material out. I still have to get off and cut some of the smaller pieces. I'm going to put. It's going to be open, sort of look like a corn crib when I'm done. Let a lot of wind through, and I'll have overhang on the roof to keep the snow and the rain out. So the problem I had in this corner, of course it would be the last hole I dig. If it was my first, I would have just shuffled the whole thing, but ran into a real issue here, and I really wanted the woodshed in this location. So I was going to put a post there where I could get it in and lash it, but I didn't think it would be strong enough. So yeah, yesterday I spent a couple of hours with the sledgehammer, pickaxes, and other implements of destruction, and I was able to get just a small hole down between those two rocks chipped away. And anyway, yeah, I got it in, got the 4 poles in, and got my front beam on in place, and I'm going to work on the second one here. So it's kind of fun project when pretty simple, 3-sided shelter basically with a shed roof, and a lot less complicated than the log cabin, so it should go up pretty quick. For the real purists, I'm using a lead pencil, and they didn't have them in 1750. And I'd take a blackened piece of charcoal out of the fire pit, and on a piece of stone, I'd make kind of a pencil out of it, and I'd mark it, but I don't get a very accurate line. Anyway, so yeah, I'm cheating a little bit here in my 18th century construction today. So, got to get these notched out, get this beam up on top. There's an old saying that only a rich man can afford poor tools. And this isn't a poor tool. This is a saw. I've repeated this, or I'm repeating myself from a previous episode, but it's made by the Pax Company in Sheffield, England. And company went into business the same year those American fellows down south of the border declared war on Britain. Anyway, yeah, it's been around a long time. They're still making them. It is one fine tool. When one works with non-dimensional lumber, so you got a lot of undulations. So I'm using some of the remnants of cedar shakes from roofing the cabin for spacers. Yeah, but for the most part, and I'll go over this one more time because I'm sure somebody's going to say these two are too small of members. I built a woodshed comparable to this size. It's stood for the last 7 or 8 years, and the roof line hasn't moved. So they're spruce, less bending moment, probably equivalent to a 2x4 on its edge. So should be adequate for this. It's a pretty short span. I got a few more boards to go, and I'm going to get my first board on. It's getting late in the day, and I'm going to call it a day. One other thing, full disclosure. The entire cabin we built with traditional nails. So some we forged ourselves. We did find a source for some, but all the square cut hand forged nails. But cheating a little bit here, we went and got ourselves some of them store-bought. So yeah, this is going to get up a lot quicker than me going back to the forge and banging out one nail at a time. Much like they would have done if they'd lived near a commercial center or a town and had the ability to purchase nails, they probably would have done it as well. Anyway, one more board. Just a thought about planks. So right now we've taken all the remnants from building our log cabin, and they're all at the mill now.
and we take our wood over there, we get it milled, bring it back and put it to use. So in the 1700s, if you think about settlements as they grew, certainly towns, villages, turning eventually into cities, were always built on waterways because they wanted the water power. So the first thing that would go up would be grist mills and power sawmills, water-powered sawmills. So yeah, we didn't hand hew these ourselves, that's for sure. They did frequently for floorboards, especially where they'd have to be somewhat thicker. They would hand hew an entire plank out. Pretty crude, but certainly it would work. And or they'd have a dirt floor in their cabin. Anyway, we're going to continue here with the roof of our woodshed. Should be done soon.